Hi everyone, my name's Marc Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and today's topic is vitamin B12. Okay, and this is one of those things that I didn't think I'd have to do a B12 video, but we've got a lot of vegans who are responding to some of my videos, and they're expressing very wrong opinions. And so, just to make sure everyone's aware of why this is important, I'm doing this video. And this is also very good information for anyone, even if you're eating meat, because if you're still eating a standard American diet, right, with all the carbs and veggies in it, you're going to be impacting your B12 absorption. So we'll talk about all that. Ready? Here we go. The single vitamin that separates humans from herbivores, vitamin B12, is not just a nutrient. It's a fundamental biological reality that has shaped our evolution. Its story at the intersection of diet, evolution, and modern nutrition science contains critical lessons for anyone making dietary choices today. What makes B12 unique isn't just its complex molecular structure, it's the fact that plants cannot make it. This biological reality creates a genuine nutritional challenge for vegetarians and vegans that no amount of kale, quinoa, or superfoods, so-called superfoods, can solve naturally. Understanding this challenge requires diving into what B12 is, why we need it, and where we can reliably get it. Okay, what vitamin B12 does in your body. What is it? B12, or cobalamin, is not just another nutrient. It's a critical coenzyme in human metabolism, a unique role that differentiates it from other vitamins. Its complex molecular structure, containing cobalt, makes it a fascinating subject in nutrition science. Inside your body, B12 is not just a nutrient, it's a vital player in several crucial functions. It helps create DNA, forms red blood cells, maintains nerve sheaths, and supports cognitive function. Without it, these fundamental processes begin to fail, emphasizing the urgency of its consumption. The consequences of B12 deficiency reveal its importance. Initial symptoms include fatigue, weakness, and brain fog. These are often mistaken for signs of stress or overwork, leading to delayed diagnosis. Left untreated, deficiency progresses to irreversible nerve damage, cognitive decline, and a specific type of anemia. Nerve damage can manifest as tingling or numbness in the hands and feet, making it crucial to recognize and address B12 deficiency early. The body stores B12 in the liver, creating reserves that can last for years. This evolutionary adaptation explains why deficiency develops slowly and often goes undetected until significant damage occurs. The plant-based B12 problem. The biological reality creates tension with plant-based dietary philosophies. Plants do not naturally produce vitamin B12. This isn't a matter of opinion or dietary ideology, it's a biochemical fact. According to the Vegan Society, vitamin B12 is the only vitamin that is not recognized as being reliably supplied from a varied whole food, plant-based diet with plenty of fruit and vegetables, together with exposure to the sun. Okay? There are other nutrients, but as far as vitamins, this is the only one you can't get from plant sources. The reason is simple. B12 is synthesized by certain bacteria, not by plants or animals. Animals obtain B12 by consuming foods containing these bacteria, or by hosting the bacteria in their digestive systems. Ruminants, my favorite animal, like cows and sheep, can produce B12 through bacterial fermentation in their multiple stomachs. Humans cannot, as our digestive systems lack this capability. This creates a genuine nutritional gap for strict vegetarians and vegans. Without animal products or supplements, obtaining adequate B12 becomes physiologically impossible. The historical context of B12 deficiency. Understanding B12's historical context reveals why this nutrient deserves special attention. Before 1948, a condition called pernicious anemia was fatal with no effective treatment. The breakthrough came when scientists discovered that consuming large amounts of raw liver could treat this previously deadly condition. In 1948, chemists Carl Volkers and Alexander Todd isolated the compound responsible, vitamin B12. This discovery earned George Whipple, William Murphy, and George Minot the 1934 Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine. The work saved countless lives and revealed the essential nature of this nutrient. The historical context highlights an important reality. Strict vegetarianism or veganism was not physiologically sustainable before B12 supplementation became available. Modern plant-based diets rely on scientific advances that allow B12 to be produced in laboratories. So remember, B12, lots of problems if you don't get enough B12. Fatigue, weakness, brain fog, nerve damage, cognitive decline, and anemia. Okay, the plant-based B12 problem. The biological reality creates tension with plant-based philosophies, right? Obviously, people who are vegans or vegetarians believe that plants provide everything you need, but it can't, because the plants just do not create B12. It's these bacteria we talked about, right? So, for strict vegetarians and vegans, without animal products or supplements, obtaining adequate B12 becomes physiologically impossible, right? Now, for years, there has been this promise of plant-based B12 sources. In fact, I remember some, 30 years ago when I started on a vegetarian vegan diet at one time. That's what we were told. Just eat certain types of plants and you can get your B12 from it. We learned that was not the case. Some plant foods, particularly fermented foods, mushrooms and algae like spirulina and nori, are promoted as B12 sources. However, the reality is more complicated. Many plant foods contain B12 analogs rather than active B12. These compounds can imitate active B12 in blood tests while interfering with B12 metabolism. Okay? We talked about other plant foods that do this, right? In other videos, that there are nutrients in plants that are analogs of the ones that we normally get from meat, and it interferes with our ability to actually use those nutrients properly. Okay? And then, of course, these are even worse because not only do they interfere with our ability to utilize B12 properly, but if you take a blood test, they show up as B12 in many cases. Once promoted as a vegetarian B12 source, spirulina contains primarily inactive B12 analogs, so they don't even do anything. These fail to provide B12 and may actively block the absorption of real B12. Recent research has shown some promise with nori, purple laver, which is a purple seaweed that's in nori. It's a very dark purple, dark black seaweed that's used in sushi. That's where most people know it from. But the evidence remains limited. One study found that consuming 5 grams of nori daily improved B12 status in vegetarians, though larger amounts provided no additional benefit, which is a question. How did it really work? And are these just, once again, analogs that actually interfere? There are lots of questions with that. The bottom line remains, no plant food has been proven to be a reliable, consistent source of active B12 for humans. Bottom line. Reliable sources of B12. Animal foods contain the most bioavailable form of B12. And you hear me talk about that a lot when I talk about nutrition. Bioavailability is key. Yes, there are a lot of plants and other foods that we supposedly are trying to eat that seem to have vitamins and nutrition in it, but are they as bioavailable as the ones that our bodies were designed to eat? And that's the key. They normally aren't very bioavailable. Organ meats do top the list, with a single serving of lamb liver providing an astonishing 3,571% of the daily value for B12 that you need. So it doesn't take a lot, okay? If you don't like eating organ meats, and I understand there are a lot of people who don't, there are some wonderful B12 organ meats that are freeze dried that you can take. Don't overdo these supplements, right? I prefer that you would eat actual organ meats every once in a while, but if you don't like the taste or you can't stomach it, and there are people who can't, just take one of these pills. You can just swallow it. You won't even know that you had it, and it doesn't take that much. Take one pill a week or something just to supplement. That's more than enough. Clams, oysters, and other shellfish are good sources. Fish, particularly sardines and tuna. Sardines are one of my favorite fishes because they're cheap, inexpensive, and they're very healthy for you. Okay? Beef and other red meats, beef, lamb, bison, are beautiful sources of B12. Eggs and dairy products. So dairy products are a little bit less. Okay? Only 2 reliable B12 sources exist for those who want to avoid animal products. That's fortified foods and supplements. And once again, you're talking about a not necessarily natural B12. And so there are questions about the bioavailability and how well they work. Fortified foods contain certain plant made from plants, like plant milk, breakfast cereals, and nutritional yeast. B12 is added during the manufacturing of these products. Okay, but once again, they're using a B12 supplement. It's a chemical form. It's not a natural form, and I question the bioavailability of it a little bit. Okay, supplements can come in various forms, right? There are 2 main ones. One is cheaper, more stable. That's the very synthetic one produced in a laboratory, and the other is an active form found in the body, which once again though is still produced in a laboratory. And the question is, can you just take this laboratory produced supplement, and how well does it really work? I have questions about that. Okay, real quick, please like, subscribe, hit the button if you want to get notified. It does help the channel a great deal, and we do appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about the absorption challenge. Getting enough B12 isn't just about consumption. Absorption presents another challenge, particularly for specific populations. B12 absorption requires a complex process. First, stomach acid separates B12 from food proteins. And one thing about human digestive processes, right? I always get down to what is the digestive system designed to do? And the human stomach is one of the most acidic stomachs in the animal world. Okay, we have a higher acidity in our stomach than most carnivores, which means that we're really designed to be an apex predator that gets almost all of its nutrition from fat and protein from animal sources, right? And this acid not only helps break down protein, but as you can see here, it's imperative in getting B12, okay? Which is a requirement. You must have B12 or you have all kinds of issues. Okay, so after the stomach separates it, then a protein called intrinsic factor binds to B12, enabling its absorption in the small intestine. Once again, you need this protein to actually absorb B12 in your small intestine. Now, this process here can fail at multiple points. If you have low stomach acid, and people who are might be told by their doctors they have low acid, as you're aging, the acidity of your stomach does tend to go down. If you're taking certain medications, especially those designed to stop stomach acid problems that you think you're getting, your protein pump inhibitors and such that reduce the acid in your stomach. Um, these stop you from getting B12, and that's a problem. Insufficient intrinsic factor. Okay, from autoimmune conditions or gastric surgery. Beware of gastric surgery. Okay, especially the ones that try to shrink your stomach. It has lots of problems. Intestinal disorders. People with Crohn's disease and celiac disease, okay, have problems absorbing B12. But people who switch to a carnivore diet, they have a great history of intestinal disorders being corrected by switching to a carnivore diet. So you're getting that B12 when you stop eating plant foods. I'm not a doctor. That's just what we've seen in a lot of reports. And then certain medications, metformin, proton pump inhibitors. And we talked about the proton pump inhibitors, right? That reduce the acid in the stomach. Well, metformin, if you're a diabetic or you're a pre-diabetic, your doctor may be prescribing metformin. Metformin goes into the liver and has it reduce the amount of sugar that it produces. This also potentially affects your ability to absorb B12. So another reason why, if you're a diabetic on diabetic medications, and metformin is one of the first ones almost every diabetic gets, it really is paramount that you do something in your diet that helps you reduce your need for these medications, because that's how you can get healthy. Okay. Age is a significant factor. As you get older, approximately 10 to 30% of older adults cannot properly absorb B12 from food sources. A lot of this has to do with the lower stomach acid. This is why health authorities recommend that adults over 50 obtain most of their B12 from supplements or fortified foods, regardless of their diet. I would say that that's probably fair advice to give, but once again, I have questions about synthetic B12s. I have questions about why the stomach acid is low on adults who are eating, if they're eating a carnivore diet. That tends not to be the case, and why they're not necessarily absorbing it through their intestines, because once again, people who go on carnivore diets seem to clear up almost all of their intestinal disorders. That's what the studies that we have so far show. It's very effective in that stuff. And then when you talk about vegetarians and vegans, any doctor is going to tell you must supplement. In fact, if you are a vegetarian or vegan, strict vegetarian, absolutely no animal products, which I guess would be a vegan, there are parents who are trying to put that onto their kids. And there are parents who have been taken to court and charged with potentially detrimental harm to their children by not giving them something, because B12, they don't have the reserves of B12 in their liver yet. And this can be this is upcoming stuff. It's news to some people, but yeah, this is an issue. Okay, it can be deadly to your children if you don't give them animal products. Okay, testing for B12. And this is crucial here. Detecting B12 deficiency presents unique challenges. Right? Standard blood tests measuring serum B12 levels can be misleading, especially for vegetarians and vegans. Remember those analogs we talked about? Well, if they show up on the blood test as looking like B12, you may look like you have plenty of serum B12, and you don't. Okay? Analogs from plant foods can register as B12 on standard tests while providing no actual B12 activity. Additionally, high folate intake, typical in plant-based diets, can mask the anemia typically used to detect B12 deficiency, right? So ask your doctor about more accurate testings if you're a vegetarian and you're concerned about, are you B12 deficient? And this is something you should have your doctor work on with you on. You want an MMA test. It's a methylmalonic acid, right? Excuse me. Homocysteine levels and holotranscobalamin 2, which is a measurement of active B12. Now, of all of these three, MMA testing, and your doctor will be very familiar with MMA, is considered by most physicians as the gold standard. When B12 is insufficient, MMA levels rise. So they can tell if you're not getting enough active B12 in your system by measuring your MMA levels, so it should be low. If they're going up, something's wrong. Providing a more reliable indicator for doctors to look at about your functional B12 status. So work with your doctor on this. There are also people, if you don't want to go to your doctor, you can order blood tests, and MMA is a very standard blood test. It's not very expensive, but definitely look into an MMA test. And why I want you to work with your doctor is that they can look at the levels and give you some advice based on that, right? Okay. Recommendations for different diets. So these are to be practical recommendations, right? The evidence points to clear recommendations based on dietary choices. For omnivores, people who think that, yes, I can eat a variety of animal foods, a variety of plants and fruits and vegetables and stuff, and I'll get what I want. Okay? Because you are consuming some animal products regularly, this generally provides you with sufficient B12. However, for those over 50, you should consider a supplement because you're not getting enough red meat and or fortified foods. But remember my things. These supplements or fortified foods are using a synthetic form of B12 that may or may not be as highly bioavailable and absorbed as true B12. And they may mask your actual B12 status. So you need to be concerned about that and get an MMA test to see if your body's actually absorbing B12 properly. Okay? For vegetarians who consume dairy and eggs, right? So this would be lacto-ovo vegetarian. These foods can provide some B12. Not as high as eating red meat, but it is there. But depending on the intake, the amount may be insufficient. Excuse me. Monitoring B12 status and considering supplements is advisable. And once again, I go back to get an MMA test every year so you can see if you're having problems. For vegans, right? A vegan is a very strict vegetarian who eats absolutely no animal products. Supplementation is not optional but mandatory. Now, the Vegan Society recommends either a daily supplement providing at least 10 micrograms, twice weekly supplement providing at least 2,000 micrograms, right? Or a regular consumption of B12 fortified foods providing at least 3 micrograms daily. Now, you have to ask yourself the question. If the Vegan Society says you need to consume fortified foods with at least 3 micrograms, but if you're taking a supplement, you need at least 10 micrograms every day, right? Or twice weekly supplements providing at least 2,000 micrograms, why are the values so different? And this goes back to my point that there really isn't a lot of good studies done to differentiate between synthetic B12 and real B12 that comes from eating meat. And the fact that we do know that some of the plant type analogs interfere with blood testing and interfere with absorption, I'm wondering how much of that is in play with these synthetic supplements, right? To the point that they can't even tell you how much to take. You gotta wonder about that. Okay? Pregnant and breastfeeding women on a plant-based diets require meticulous attention to B12 status, as deficiency can cause severe developmental problems in infants. That's key. If you are pregnant or breastfeeding, I strongly advise you work with your doctor about your B12 status if you're not eating meat. Okay? For the benefit of your baby. Make sure you keep control of that. Okay, the broader implications. The B12 question extends beyond individual nutrition to broader philosophical considerations about diet. The fact that a plant-based diet cannot naturally provide all essential nutrients challenges certain narratives about the naturalness of strict vegetarianism for humans. It's not natural. Okay? It suggests that our biology evolved with some dependence on animal source nutrients. This doesn't invalidate ethical or environmental arguments for plant-based diets. That's something very personal. If it's religious, ethical, or environmental, that's your choice. Just understand what you're doing with the nutrition you're putting in your body. All we simply say are acknowledge the fact that such diets, vegan or very strict vegetarian, require modern technological intervention through supplementation to keep you from having severe problems. And I don't know how well they actually meet these nutritional needs. This reality invites a more nuanced conversation about human dietary requirements that respects both ethical considerations and biological realities. Okay, moving forward with nutritional honesty. The vitamin B12 story demonstrates why nutritional honesty matters more than ideological purity. Acknowledging biological realities allows for informed choices that support both health and values. Okay? For those choosing plant-based diets, understanding the B12 challenge is essential for long-term health. Anyone who tells me that they advocate a plant-based diet and no animal foods, I always say, where do you get your B12? And the only place they can actually honestly say they get it from is from supplementation or fortification, which is of foods that they eat, which is a form of supplementation. And it's supplementing with a factory, laboratory-derived product that there are potentially problems with on the absorption and bioavailability of. So the question is, if they think it's more natural to eat vegetables, then why does the human body need something that cannot be produced by plants in the first place? Right? That doesn't make any logical sense. For nutrition professionals, right? And health educators, while supplementation may help, it isn't a compromise with the reality that humans need B12, and B12 only naturally comes in animal products. Okay, so if you're advising your clients and patients, if you're a health provider, to eat plant-based foods only, I question your ethical standard on B12, on this B12 question. I really do. Because I would much rather get natural forms of the nutrition my body needs than rely on factory, laboratory-produced synthetics. Okay? The goal isn't to promote or discourage any particular diet. In this case, I just want you to know your choices properly. If you're not going to eat animal products and you're going to stick primarily to just plant-based foods or only plant-based foods, how are you ensuring that your body's getting the things that only animal diet can provide? Okay? The vitamin B12 issues remind us that nutrition is ultimately about biology, not ideology. Okay? You may have all the ethics considerations in mind, right? Most of which have been proven to be absolutely false narratives in the first place. Okay? Eating meat is not bad for the environment. Eating meat does not reduce the amount of food available, right? I remember back in the day when I was looking at vegetarianism, that was the when Diet for a Small Planet, right, came out, and they're saying that how much water and how much ground does a cow need to eat, and how you can grow so much more food in it. Well, that's baloney, because the reason is that where most of your ruminants can graze are places that are just not economically feasible for us to grow food on in any large amount. So it doesn't interfere with our ability to grow all the other plant crops that you may want. But what it does acknowledge is the fact that ruminant animals are better for the planet. And I've got other videos that cover that in detail. Okay? So it's not about ideology, it's about biology. Plain and simple. Respecting this fact leads to better outcomes for everyone, regardless of your dietary philosophy. All right. Thank you for watching. If you have comments or questions, leave them in the appropriate section. And if you have an idea for a video you'd like me to cover, anything, as you can see here, right? You got a friend who's eating a weird diet. Well, let's say they caught the craze to eat the sugar diet, right? Which is getting very popular. I've got a video on that already. Look for it, right? But let me know what you want me to look into. I do the research. I'll produce the videos. I'll let you know when it's available. All right. Thank you very much.